I never thought I'd have to set a trap for my own neighbor. Living in a quiet suburban neighborhood with white fences, trimmed lawns, and morning joggers, you'd expect peace, not theft. But ever since Karen, the self-appointed HOA queen, moved in next door, peace was the last thing we had. Packages started vanishing from porches all over the street. Small things at first, dog treats, garden lights, but then, more expensive deliveries started disappearing, too. When I lost a new set of power tools worth hundreds of dollars, I decided enough was enough. Everyone suspected porch pirates from outside the neighborhood, but the timing was too perfect. Deliveries went missing only when Karen was home, sipping her morning coffee and pretending to monitor the street. I installed a hidden camera behind a flower pot, and the next day caught her at Karen, the same woman who fined me for leaving my trash bin out 10 minutes late, was casually stuffing my Amazon boxes into her shiny silver Lexus. I wanted payback, but not the illegal kind. So, I came up with something that would teach her a colorful lesson. Inside my next package, I placed a hidden dye bomb, a bright purple, non-toxic explosion that would burst the second she opened it. When she struck again that sunny afternoon, I watched from my window as she grabbed it, smirking, and drove away. Seconds later, her Lexus was covered in a violet cloud so bright it could be seen 3 houses down. The HOA queen had just crowned herself the purple thief of the neighborhood. That was the day justice finally got creative, and our quiet street got its color back. It started on one of those golden mornings where everything looked too perfect to be real. The sun glimmered across the quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood that could have been printed on a postcard. Lawns were trimmed evenly, mailboxes shone with a fresh coat of paint, and the air smelled faintly of freshly cut grass mixed with morning coffee. Kids were already at school, dogs barked softly behind white fences, and the only sound breaking the peace was the soft hum of delivery vans making their daily rounds. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other by name, or at least pretended to. I had lived there for 5 years, and I thought I knew everyone's habits. Jeff across the street washed his car every Sunday morning without fail. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson took their walk at exactly 7:30 a.m., holding hands like teenagers. And then there was Karen, the newest addition to our perfect block. She had moved in about 6 months ago, but it didn't take long for her to make her presence known. She declared herself the unofficial head of the Homeowners Association despite there being an actual HOA president already. She'd go around writing reminder notes about trash bins, lawn height, and even Christmas decorations that didn't meet community standards. The first time something went missing, no one thought much of it. Jeff complained that his package of solar garden lights never arrived. Amazon marked it as delivered, but the box was nowhere to be found. We all shrugged it off as a driver mistake or porch theft by some outsider. But then, 2 days later, my own package disappeared at a new set of screwdrivers I'd been waiting for. I checked the tracking. It was delivered at 2:14 p.m., right when I was home working in my study. I'd heard the truck outside, even saw it from the window. 10 minutes later I went out to grab the box, but it was gone. At first I doubted myself. Maybe I missed it. Maybe they put it at the wrong house. I asked around. Jeff hadn't seen anything, and the Thompsons were out. But when Lisa next door said her daughter's birthday present had also vanished the same day, a small alarm went off in my head. Over the next week the pattern grew impossible to ignore. Every few days, another package vanished. A pair of shoes here, a box of vitamins there. Even an expensive drone one neighbor had ordered for his son's school project. The whole street buzzed with frustration. We started blaming delivery drivers, porch pirates, even teenagers playing pranks. But deep down, something didn't add up. The timing was too precise. The thefts always happened during the late morning or early afternoon, when most people were at work and only a few neighbors were home. And one of those neighbors was always, without fail, Karen. Karen lived 2 houses down from me, in a large 2-story home with bright white shutters and a driveway that gleamed like it had been waxed daily. Her silver Lexus SUV was her pride and joy. She washed it every other day and often stood outside polishing it in the sunlight. She had a reputation for being nosy, always peeking through her blinds or walking her little Pomeranian, Daisy, up and down the block for exercise while she scanned everyone's yards. She liked to think of herself as the guardian of neighborhood standards. But lately, something about her behavior started to seem off. Every time a package vanished, I noticed her outside, not long before or after. Sometimes she'd stop by and casually ask, "Did you get something delivered today?" as if she were keeping tabs. I began to watch more closely. I started working by the front window instead of the back room, my laptop open on the table while I sipped coffee and pretended to type. I noticed that every day around the same time, the delivery truck stopped at least once on our street, and every time, not long after, Karen's Lexus would roll slowly past, gliding like a shark through calm water. It was too much of a coincidence. One Tuesday I decided to test my theory. I ordered something cheaper, a pack of sponges for $5, and waited. When the delivery arrived, I watched the driver place it on my porch, snap the usual photo, and leave. I checked my watch. 1:37 p.m. I left the package there on purpose and continued to work. While keeping an eye out the window at exactly 1:50, I saw movement. Karen's Lexus turned the corner and slowed down near my driveway. She glanced around, pretending to be on her phone. Then, in one smooth motion, she opened her car door, stepped out, walked up to my porch, and snatched the box. She didn't even hesitate. She tossed it in her back seat and drove off like nothing happened. I sat there frozen for a second, my heart pounding. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen. The same woman who sent warning letters about lawn weeds was stealing from her neighbors in broad daylight. I ran outside, half expecting to find the package still there, but it was gone. Completely gone that night. I shared what I saw with Jeff and Lisa at first. They were shocked, then skeptical. Karen, Jeff said, frowning. She's annoying, but a thief. Nah, Lisa wasn't sure either. She does act weird, but maybe she was just moving it for you, moving it for me, into her. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just because of the thefts, but because she had everyone fooled. She was the last person anyone would suspect, which made her the perfect criminal. The next morning, I decided to get proof. I bought a small security camera, the kind you can hide easily. I tucked it behind the flower pot beside my porch, aimed directly at the delivery spot. The camera connected to my phone, and I set it to record any motion. 2 days later, another package was due to arrive, this time a box of kitchen utensils. I made sure I was home. At 11:12 a.m., the delivery truck came. The driver set the box down, snapped the proof photo, and drove off. 15 minutes passed. Then, right on cue, I saw her, Karen, in her usual floral blouse, sunglasses glinting in the sunlight, walking Daisy along the sidewalk. She looked around casually, pretending to be checking her phone, then strolled right up to my porch. With one quick glance to each side, she grabbed the package, tucked it under her arm, and walked briskly to her Lexus. I caught everything. The camera didn't miss a second. Her face, the car, the plates clear as day. I sat back on my couch, a slow, stunned smile forming on my face. I finally had proof. The queen of HOA perfection was nothing but a daytime thief in pearls and perfume. I didn't call the police that day, not yet. Because as satisfying as justice would feel, I wanted something better, something poetic. She had embarrassed our whole neighborhood. And now it was time she learned a lesson she'd never forget. And under that bright morning sun, I began planning the perfect trap. The next morning, sunlight poured through my kitchen window, warm and golden, as if mocking the frustration I still felt from the day before. My coffee steamed in my hand while my phone screen replayed the video of Karen stealing my package again and again. Every detail was crystal clear, her floral blouse fluttering in the breeze, her oversized sunglasses hiding nothing, her silver Lexus gleaming in the sun as she tossed my box into the back seat. It was all right there, proof. And yet, I didn't feel satisfied. Sure, I could have sent the video to the HOA or the police and ended it right there, but it didn't feel like enough. Karen had spent months acting superior, finding people for leaving recycling bins out or using the wrong shade of mailbox paint. She embarrassed people publicly, pretended to be the neighborhood's moral compass, all while sneaking around and stealing from the very people she criticized. No, I didn't want to expose her quietly. I wanted her to feel it, to see the consequences of her greed and arrogance. I spent the next few hours scrolling through videos online, searching for harmless pranks, clever traps, and DIY porch pirate deterrents. That's when I stumbled upon an idea that made me grin like a villain. Someone had built a package filled with a colorful dye bomb, a small device that would explode harmlessly but leave an impossible too-clean stain all over whoever opened it. Non-toxic, perfectly safe, but humiliating as hell. It was poetic justice in a box. I knew exactly what to do. First, I needed to make sure she'd take the bait again. I ordered another cheap package from Amazon, just a set of plain white towels. I didn't even need them. They were just the cover. I tracked the delivery time carefully, knowing the driver usually came around 11:30 a.m. Then came the fun part, creating the trap. I grabbed a small cardboard box from my garage, about the same size as a normal Amazon package. Inside I placed a few wadded-up paper towels to give it some weight. In the center, I installed my creation, a small plastic bag filled with washable purple dye powder, connected to a balloon that would burst open when the box lid was lifted. I tested it outside with a stick, POOF. A brilliant cloud of violet powder burst into the air, catching the sunlight like shimmering smoke. It was perfect, bright, bold, and impossible to hide. I smiled to myself as I rebuilt the trap inside the box. I even resealed it neatly with Amazon tape I'd saved from a previous delivery. From the outside it looked completely ordinary, just another online order waiting to be stolen. When morning came, I placed the box right on my porch, directly in view of the camera but out of reach of suspicion. The real delivery was still on its way. But I knew Karen couldn't resist the sight of an unattended package. By 10:45 a.m. I was ready. I poured myself another cup of coffee, sat by the window, and waited. The air outside shimmered with sunlight, birds hopping across lawns and sprinklers hissing faintly in the distance. Neighbors went about their routines, mowing, gardening, chatting. It was the perfect quiet suburban morning. Right before chaos. At 11:23, the delivery truck arrived. The driver dropped off my real order, snapped a photo and drove off. I went outside, grabbed my legitimate package, and replaced it with the trap. I positioned it carefully, making sure it looked freshly delivered. Then I went back inside and turned on the live feed from my hidden camera. The anticipation made my heart thump louder than usual. It didn't take long. At exactly 11:46 a.m., a familiar silver Lexus turned the corner. My lips curled into a slow grin. There she was, Karen, her blonde hair tied neatly, Daisy the Pomeranian sitting in the passenger seat like royalty. She slowed down, glancing around. I could see her eyes scanning my porch through her sunglasses. She parked 2 houses down, typical thief behavior, pretending she wasn't stopping at my place. Then she got out, leash in hand, pretending to walk her dog as usual. She strolled up the sidewalk, glancing casually at every yard, humming to herself like she owned the place. When she reached my porch, she paused, adjusted her sunglasses, and looked around one last time. I held my breath. Then, just like before, she stepped up, bent down, and snatched the box. Her movements were so smooth, so practiced, that it almost looked like muscle memory. She tucked it under her arm, turned around, and strutted back toward her car, still humming, as if she hadn't just committed theft in broad daylight. I could hardly contain myself. My hands shook with excitement as I watched her open her car door and place the box on the passenger seat. Then she got in, started the engine, and drove off. I switched to the next camera feed I'd installed by the curb, catching the perfect view of her Lexus disappearing down the road. I didn't have to wait long. About 2 minutes later, a faint pop echoed faintly through the street, even from inside my house. I could hear it. Then came the sound of screeching brakes. I hurried to my window and caught a glimpse of what could only be described as poetic justice in motion. A massive, bright purple cloud was billowing out of the Lexus. Purple powder poured from the open windows, coating the shiny silver paint in streaks of violet mist. The sunlight turned the entire scene into something out of a movie, a glittering, colorful explosion of embarrassment. I could see her silhouette inside, flailing her arms, coughing, waving her hands as if trying to fight the cloud. Even Daisy jumped onto the dashboard, leaving little purple paw prints everywhere. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Karen stumbled out of the car, covered from head to toe in violet dust. Her hair was streaked purple, her white blouse turned lavender, and her perfect khaki pants were now a patchy mess of color. She stood in the middle of the road, frozen, realizing what had just happened. The neighbors started coming out of their houses, drawn by the noise. Jeff, holding his car sponge, blinked in disbelief. Karen, what on earth happened? Karen looked like a deer caught in headlights. It exploded. Someone's trying to frame me, she shrieked, waving her purple-stained hands in the air. I said quietly to myself from behind the window, watching her panic. Sure they are. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered, everyone staring at her car, now permanently tinted with streaks of purple dust. Karen stammered excuses, trying to laugh it off. But her humiliation was impossible to hide. That afternoon, my phone buzzed non-stop. Neighbors shared photos, videos, and laughter in our community group chat. Someone even captioned one photo. Looks like the HOA has new colors this season, violet victory. I didn't post anything myself. I didn't have to. The message was clear. The queen of neighborhood perfection had fallen loudly, brightly, and publicly. That night, for the first time in weeks, no one worried about stolen packages. And as I sat on my porch watching the sun dip behind the houses, I couldn't help but smile. Justice, it seemed, came in purple. The following morning, the neighborhood woke up buzzing, not with the usual sounds of sprinklers or birds, but with whispers. The purple explosion, as everyone had already started calling it, was all anyone could talk about. The sight of Karen's once shiny silver Lexus, now streaked with violet haze, was burned into everyone's memory. The incident spread faster than wildfire through the community group chat, with memes, jokes, and screenshots flying around like confetti. I sat on my porch sipping my coffee, watching as the sun lit up the quiet street. It was one of those clear, crisp mornings where everything felt clean and peaceful except for Karen's driveway, which looked like a scene from a paint commercial gone wrong. Her Lexus sat parked awkwardly halfway up the slope, still coated in blotches of purple, despite the obvious attempts she'd made to scrub it clean. Buckets, rags, and bottles of cleaner lay scattered across her driveway, but no amount of scrubbing could undo the violet shame that clung to every crevice of her car. From my spot, I could hear her muttering to herself. Every few minutes she'd throw down a sponge and storm inside, then come back out with a new cleaning product. Even Daisy, her little Pomeranian, looked miserable. Her fur had faint lavender streaks that made her look like she'd been dipped in grape juice. I wasn't the only one watching. Across the street, Jeff leaned casually against his car, pretending to wipe the hood but clearly enjoying the show. Morning, he called out to me with a smirk. Heard Karen had a bit of color added to her life yesterday. I grinned. Yeah, seems like it. Can't say she didn't have it coming, he said, lowering his voice. Half the neighborhood's relieved. You know she'll find old Mrs. Conway $50 for hanging wind chimes last month. I chuckled. Guess karma finally got creative. Karen must have overheard because she shot us both a glare sharp enough to slice glass. You think this is funny?" she snapped, her voice trembling between anger and embarrassment. "Someone vandalized my property. This isn't a joke, this is a crime." Jeff raised his eyebrows. "A crime, huh? Kinda like stealing other people's packages." Her face paled beneath a faint purple tint still clinging to her skin. "Excuse me." "Oh, come on, Karen," Jeff continued. "Half the street knows you've been snatching deliveries. You've been caught on camera." "You know," Karen's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. But she saw the way everyone around was watching, neighbors tending their lawns, pretending not to listen, yet clearly waiting for her next move. Finally, she scoffed, tossed her sponge aside, and stormed back into her house, slamming the door behind her. I could have left it there. I should have probably, but curiosity got the better of me. That afternoon I reviewed the footage again and backed up the video to a USB drive, just in case she tried to twist the story around. Sure enough, later that day, a white SUV with an HOA logo rolled up in front of my house. Out stepped Peter, the official HOA president, a calm, soft-spoken man in his 40s who always tried to keep the peace. He waved politely. "Morning, Mark. Mind if I have a word?" I nodded and invited him up to the porch. He sighed as he sat down. "I'm sure you already know why I'm here. Karen filed a complaint this morning. She claims someone set a booby trap for her, said it exploded inside her car, caused damage, and, well, left her emotionally distressed." I nearly laughed, but I held it in. She also happened to mention why she was opening a package that wasn't hers. He gave me a knowing look. "That's exactly what I asked her." She got quiet. I pulled out my phone and handed it to him. "You might want to see this." Peter watched the video silently, his expression unreadable. When it finished, he let out a long breath and leaned back. "Well," he said finally, "that explains a lot. She's been doing this for weeks." I said. "I wasn't the only one. Everyone on the streets lost packages. I just decided to stop letting it slide." Peter nodded slowly. "I believe you. I've had complaints from other residents too, but no one had proof. Until now." He looked down at the phone again, the corner of his mouth twitching as if he were trying not to smile. "And that purple stuff, what was it?" "Harmless dye powder," I said with a shrug. "Washable, non-toxic, and perfectly safe, just a little hard to get off." He chuckled quietly. "That's poetic. I'll give you that." For a moment, we just sat there, listening to the birds and the distant hum of The neighborhood had never felt so alive, not with tension, but with relief. People were outside again, chatting, laughing, sharing jokes about the purple pirate. Later that evening, as the sun dipped lower and painted everything gold, I saw Karen again. She emerged from her house wearing dark sunglasses, her hair pulled back tight, her clothes plain and colorless. She avoided everyone's eyes as she got into a still purple Lexus and drove off, leaving a faint trail of shame behind her. That night, I thought it was all over. The neighborhood had gotten its justice. Karen had been caught, and life could finally return to normal. But the next morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox, thick, official, with HOA violation notice printed across the top. I tore it open and read it aloud. Homeowners Association violation notice, property disruption and disorderly conduct. It has come to our attention that an incident occurred involving the use of a hazardous device resulting in property damage and public disturbance. You are required to attend a hearing this Friday to discuss potential disciplinary action. I almost laughed out loud. Karen wasn't done yet. She was fighting back, trying to twist the story, frame me as the villain, and paint herself as the victim. By noon, word had spread again. Neighbors were on my lawn, outraged. "She's really filing a complaint," Jeff said, shaking his head. "Unbelievable. She got caught stealing." Lisa crossed her arms. "If she drags this to the HOA, we'll all speak up. Everyone knows the truth now." I nodded, feeling a mix of irritation and determination. "Let her try. I've got proof, witnesses, and a purple Lexus as Exhibit A." The rest of the day passed in a blur of whispered conversations and quiet tension. I caught glimpses of Karen peeking through her blinds, clearly rattled but still clinging to her pride. It was strange she'd been humiliated publicly, caught on video, yet somehow she couldn't let it go. Maybe it wasn't just about the theft. Maybe, deep down, it was about control. As dusk settled, I sat on my porch once more, the sky painted in fading orange light. I looked down the street, peaceful again, safe again. And though I didn't know what Friday's hearing would bring, I knew one thing for certain. Karen had started a battle she couldn't win, because this time, the truth was brighter and far more permanent than any purple stain. Friday morning arrived with a strange mix of calm and tension. The sun was out early, glinting off car windows, and the neighborhood looked picture-perfect again. But beneath that suburban calm, something was brewing. Word had spread that the HOA hearing was happening that day, not at some distant office, but right at the community clubhouse on Oak Ridge Lane. It wasn't an official courtroom, but everyone treated it like one. People whispered about it over fences, pretending to rake leaves while sneaking glances toward the clubhouse. Even Jeff texted me that morning. "Front row seat secured. This is gonna be good." I wasn't nervous. Not exactly. I knew I had the truth on my side, and the video evidence, too. But I also knew how Karen operated. She was manipulative, charming when she wanted to be, and had a way of twisting words that made people second-guess themselves. She'd played the victim before, and I had no doubt she'd try again. I got dressed in a simple blue polo and jeans, wanting to look calm and honest, not confrontational. When I stepped outside, several neighbors waved from their driveways. "Good luck, Mark," someone called out. "Give her a taste of her own medicine," shouted another. Their support gave me a quiet boost of confidence. When I arrived at the clubhouse, the room was already half full. Folding chairs lined up in rows, a long table at the front where the HOA board sat, Peter in the middle, flanked by two other members, one scribbling notes and the other looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Karen was already there, of course, seated on the opposite side of the room, her posture stiff and her sunglasses perched on top of her head like a crown. She wore a white blouse, though I could still see faint purple stains around the cuffs. She gave me a tight-lipped smile when I walked in. "I see you decided to show up," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. The room fell silent as Peter tapped a pen on the table. "All right, everyone, let's come to order. We're here to discuss an incident involving property damage, community conduct, and potential violations of HOA policy." Karen was the first to speak. Of course she was. She stood dramatically, clutching a folder of printed papers. "I was the victim of a malicious act," she began, her voice trembling just enough to sound practiced. "An explosive device containing harmful chemicals was placed in a package on Mr. Mark's property. I made the mistake of picking it up, thinking it had been It detonated inside my vehicle, damaging my car, ruining my clothing, and causing me extreme emotional distress." She turned slightly toward the audience neighbors sitting in the back rows as if performing for them. "This kind of behavior," she continued, "is unacceptable in our community. It's dangerous. What if a child had opened that package?" I could almost hear the collective eye roll from the crowd. Jeff coughed to cover a laugh. Peter nodded slowly, jotting a few notes. "Thank you, Karen. We appreciate your statement. Now, Mark, you may respond." I stood up calmly, my heart steady. "Thank you, Peter. First off, I'd like to point out that Karen's version of the story leaves out a few key details, like the fact that she's been stealing packages from multiple neighbors for weeks." A ripple of whispers ran through the crowd. Karen's face tightened. "I didn't want to make accusations without proof," I continued, pulling out a small flash drive and placing it on the table. "So I installed a hidden camera by my porch. The footage clearly shows Karen walking up to my property, taking my packages without permission, and placing them in her car. This happened more than once." Peter looked surprised. "You have video evidence?" "Yes," I said, "and I've shared copies with several neighbors for transparency." At that, Lisa stood up from the back row. "He's telling the truth," she said. "Karen took my daughter's birthday gift last week. The delivery company confirmed it was dropped off, and the next day it was gone." Another voice chimed in. "Jeff, same here. My solar lights vanished the day she was taking her dog for a walk. Funny how she's always walking Daisy when deliveries happen." Karen's head snapped toward them, her face flushed pink. "This is ridiculous. You're all just ganging up on me because I enforce the rules. None of you like being told to keep your lawns neat." "No one likes a thief, Karen," someone muttered from the back. Laughter rippled through the room. Peter cleared his throat. "All right, let's all stay respectful," he said, though he was clearly struggling not to smile. "Karen, these are serious accusations. Do you deny taking packages that weren't yours?" "I was collecting them," she snapped, "to keep them safe until people got home. It's called being a good neighbor." I held up my phone, playing the video on the screen. "This one shows you taking my package at 11:46 a.m. and driving off with it. You didn't leave a note, you didn't text me, and you didn't return it." The room watched in silence as the video played, the clear image of Karen in her floral blouse, glancing around, picking up my package, and hurrying to her Lexus. When it ended, Peter leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. "Karen," he said finally, "that doesn't look like you were collecting anything. That looks like theft." Her composure cracked. "You're all against me. This is a setup. He planted that box just to humiliate me." "I planted it," I said evenly, "because you kept stealing from me. The dye powder wasn't harmful, just washable. Maybe not so easy to remove from leather seats, but that's karma, not cruelty." The room erupted in quiet laughter. Even Peter couldn't help smirking. "All right," he said, raising a hand for silence. "I think we've heard enough." He turned to the other board members, who whispered briefly before nodding. Then he faced us again. "After reviewing the evidence and hearing statements from both parties, the HOA has concluded that Karen was indeed engaging in theft of resident property. The incident with the dye powder, while unorthodox, was a direct consequence of her actions." Karen gasped. "You can't be serious," Peter continued, unfazed. "Effective immediately. You're removed from any self-appointed HOA roles and prohibited from issuing community warnings or fines. Additionally, due to multiple confirmed complaints, you're fined for property misconduct." Her voice rose an octave. "You're fining me. I'm the victim here." "No," Peter said calmly. "You were the thief who got caught." The room broke into applause. Karen stood there, trembling, her face red and her pride shattered. She grabbed her folder, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out of the clubhouse, slamming the door behind her. When the sound faded, Peter sighed. "Well," he said dryly, "I suppose that's one way to wrap up a Friday." Laughter echoed across the room again. Jeff clapped me on the back. "You handled that perfectly, man. Couldn't have planned it better." Lisa grinned. "Our HOA meetings have never been this entertaining." As people filed out, I took one last look around. The tension that had hung over our neighborhood for months was gone. People were smiling again, not because someone got punished, but because justice finally made sense. Outside, the afternoon sun gleamed off the freshly washed cars and bright lawns. Karen's Lexus sat at the end of the street, still faintly purple, like a reminder of what happens when arrogance meets karma. And as I walked home, I realized something simple but true sometimes. Doing the right thing doesn't just fix the problem, it restores peace, one purple car at a time. A week had passed since the HOA hearing, and for the first time in months, peace had finally returned to Oak Ridge Lane. The mornings felt quieter, calmer, even fresher. The only thing louder than the birdsong now was the laughter of neighbors chatting over fences, catching up without the constant tension of Karen lurking around. The air seemed lighter, free of that controlling energy she carried with her everywhere she went. Every day since the meeting, I found myself appreciating the small things again. The rhythmic sound of sprinklers tapping across the lawns, the warm breeze carrying the smell of someone grilling breakfast bacon down the block, the soft hum of delivery trucks stopping by with new packages that, thankfully, stayed right where they belonged. It was strange how much difference one person's behavior could make to the entire street's mood. With Karen finally exposed, it felt like we'd all been released from an invisible grip, of course. Karen herself hadn't vanished completely. Her house still stood there, clean, proper, but eerily quiet. The silver Lexus was parked in the driveway, faint purple smudges still visible if you looked closely enough. She hadn't spoken to anyone since the hearing, though everyone noticed her blinds twitching whenever someone passed by. She was watching, but for once, she didn't have anything to say. The woman who used to police the neighborhood was now just another silent resident, too embarrassed to show her face. The HOA officially announced new community guidelines that week, and for the first time, they actually made sense. Peter had called for a more balanced approach, fewer unnecessary fines, more open communication, and an emphasis on kindness over control. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. It took a petty thief pretending to enforce rules for us to learn what real community meant. One sunny afternoon, I was sitting on my porch again, sipping lemonade, when Jeff came by holding a small brown box. "Hey," he said, grinning. "It actually arrived." I raised an eyebrow. "That your new drone?" "Yep, ordered it 2 weeks ago. Delivered this morning, still on my porch when I got home." "I think that's a first." We both laughed. There was a lightness between neighbors that hadn't been there before. People trusted each other again. Packages were being left out a little longer without worry. Kids were riding their bikes past Karen's house without fear of getting yelled at. And the HOA email threads had shifted from complaints to compliments. As the day wore on, I found myself reflecting on how it had all played out. I hadn't planned to become the guy who exposed a thief with a purple dye bomb. I just wanted my tools back. But somehow, that one act had changed everything. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about standing up to hypocrisy and showing that, even in the quietest neighborhoods, truth still mattered. That evening, Peter stopped by. He was holding a clipboard, but he wasn't here for official business. "Hey Mark," he said, smiling. "Mind if I sit?" "Not at all." He settled into the chair beside me, looking around the street with a satisfied sigh. "You know, I've been on this board for 6 years. I've dealt with noise complaints, lawn wars, even someone painting their mailbox neon green. But I've never seen the neighborhood this united. Guess it just took one purple Lexus." I joked. He chuckled. "That, and someone brave enough to do something about it." "I watched that video again last night. The way you handled it. No yelling, no destruction. Just smart justice. You could have gone to the police, but you chose a different route. You reminded people that standing up for what's right doesn't have to mean starting a fight." I nodded slowly. "I just wanted her to stop the rest. That happened on its own." Peter smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, the HOA owes you. I'm thinking of starting a neighborhood integrity committee. You know, people who actually help, not control. Maybe you'd like to lead it." I raised an eyebrow. "Me, after all this?" "Exactly because of all this," he said. "You kept things fair. We could use more of that." I thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "Sure, why not? Someone's got to keep things honest around here." Just then, a sound caught our attention. The rumble of a car engine. Karen's Lexus slowly pulled out of her driveway. She didn't look around, didn't wave, just kept her gaze fixed ahead as she drove off down the street. Her car still carried faint lavender streaks that shimmered under the sunlight, like an unintentional badge of truth. Peter and I watched her go. "You think she ever apologize?" he asked. I shook my head. "Maybe not out loud, but I think she's learned her lesson. Every time she sees that purple tint, she'll remember." He chuckled softly. "That color's not going anywhere soon." When the sun dipped below the rooftops, the streetlights flickered on one by one. Families gathered on porches, laughter filled the air. And for the first time in months, Oak Ridge Lane looked exactly the way it was supposed to, peaceful, safe, and genuinely happy. The next day, I put together a small neighborhood get-together, a barbecue, open to everyone. No sign-up sheets, no rules, no HOA permissions needed. People showed up with dishes, desserts, and smiles. Even Mrs. Conway brought her forbidden wind chimes, hanging them proudly on the clubhouse fence where they danced in the breeze. It felt like a celebration of everything we'd regained: trust, friendship, and a sense of belonging that at one point, as the kids ran around chasing bubbles and the smell of grilled burgers filled the air, Jeff raised a toast. "To Mark," he said, holding up his drink, "for showing us that karma doesn't always need to be cruel. Sometimes it just needs to be creative." The crowd laughed and clapped, and I couldn't help but grin. It wasn't about fame or pride. It was about the moment, the neighborhood finally being what it was always meant to be. Later that evening, as the sky faded into gold and soft orange, I sat back on my porch and looked around at the happy chaos. The laughter, the chatter, the soft ring of those wind chimes, everything felt perfect. Justice had been served, peace had returned. And even though one neighbor's car would forever carry a purple stain, the street itself was brighter than ever. Karen never attended another HOA meeting. A month later, a moving truck appeared in her driveway. She sold the house quietly and left without a word. By then, the purple Lexus was nearly clean, but it didn't matter. The memory of a fall would linger far longer than the color itself. And as for me, I still checked my porch cameras every now and then. Not out of fear anymore, but habit. Every new package felt like a small victory, a reminder that honesty had won, that good neighbors still existed, and that sometimes poetic justice was the best kind of justice there was. That was the end of the HOA Karen saga, but also the beginning of something better, a neighborhood that finally understood that respect was worth more than any rule.